look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am some sort of master of the universe when it comes to the subject of education, right? I mean, you're looking at a guy who attended as well as dropped out of 3 JCs, three, one, two, three, right? I learned that. I learned how to count at the very least, which might be much more than what is going on in the current education system. So I'm not this guy who essentially is an expert on the subject, but I am a common sense guy. I'm a guy who does my best to call it as I see it. And I honestly believe that this subject of the Department of Education either being completely abolished and eradicated, done with, or just revamped and changed from the inside out. I believe the only reason that this is even a controversial subject is because it has now become a partisan subject, which means, it's become one-sided politically, right? Because it's Trump doing it is a problem. If it was almost any other president beforehand, right or left, I don't think it would have been the same type of controversy. But because we have the disruptor known as DJT, it's an issue, just like everything else. I mean, Doge is an issue, right? How dare you save Americans the money that they earned and worked for so hard that we are misusing, misappropriating, and possibly laundering? How dare you do that? To hell with Doge. You are the enemy of the American people. Really? They're the enemy, not the individual who is taking our taxpayer dollars, misappropriating those funds and using them in sketchy ways. Y'all aren't the enemy of the American people. It's the ones who are auditing and telling us the truth about it. I digress. The Department of Education has not been doing their job. Simple as that. If you look at what education now is in America, we have fallen behind in ways that are honestly kind of heartbreaking. I mean, there are kids, they're adults, but there are kids who don't know how to read, not just at grade level, just don't know how to read overall, right? There are those who don't know how to do basic math. We have certain states where kids are 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 grade levels behind. Now, compare that to those who are competitors of the United States, quote unquote, enemies of the United States, like China. Yeah, we have fallen behind. And instead of focusing on the A's, the B's, and the C's, we have now made it priority to focus on the L's, the G's, and the B's. These institutions, and I'm talking K through 12 as well as so-called higher ed, these institutions are more focused on propagandizing, on indoctrinating, on essentially creating ideology than they are on teaching our kids how to learn and also what matters to learn, right? Because I believe that education is supposed to be an experience of teaching you how to use your brain, teaching you how to use your faculties, teaching how you use your gifting, your propensities, your tendency, whatever it is, right? Like it's to lead and guide you, not to form your brain into essentially what it needs to be. And this is the actual foundation of the modern education system. It is actually rooted in propaganda, unfortunately. It's just that it wasn't so damn blatant. And at the very least, we were, molding minds to become something that was productive. Now it's like we're creating minds that are anti the very system that they're living in. They're trying to destroy the world around them as opposed to building and being constructive. When the Austrians created this form of education, they wanted to create the Austrian mind in their children or in these kids. I think it was Hungarian or Austrian. I forget. But when this was rolled out, right, this form of education was to take a young mind and to form it into whatever you wanted it to be. So there was propaganda there. It's like, against like echo chambers. Are you in an echo chamber that is feeding you productive, constructive, positive ideas, or one that is feeding you doom and gloom? That's the difference, right? It's the same with education. You're to form a mind, but the best and most effective way is to form a mind in a way where it can think for itself, or it can at least think in linearity with something that is productive as opposed to something that is destructive. It's like before it was, here are the founding fathers, here's who they were, here's what they did, and do with it what you will. Now it's here's a bunch of racist white men that we need to abolish and eradicate. They were so evil. They're the worst. We hate them so much. That's kind of, I guess, a quick little microcosm of what's been going on in education, right? So we are in a place where, classrooms are littered with pride flags. They're littered with BLM flags, the Transformer flags, whatever. And yet there is no American flag. And I'm not saying that, oh, you need to be plastering your room with American flags, but I am saying that this is the nation in which your children are being educated in. So at the very least, there needs to be a representation of that context. But no, now it's evil. Now it's a terrible thing. And, we need to do away with that. And instead, we put ahead of that these extremist sort of ideologies, these extremist groups that don't have the best intention for our children. They barely have any good intention at all. I mean, they parade to do so, no pun intended. They mask themselves as being that, no pun intended. I definitely didn't see that one coming. But, these are the sorts of things that are being put in front of our kids. These are the sorts of mentalities. Hate your country, hate what you are. You are a victim, which is one of the most... This is one of the most problematic ideologies of the woke movement, the far left, whatever you want to call it. And you find it in all of society, but it is pervasive because in the cult that is woke, they've built their entire identity on being a victim, you see. And when you give somebody that sort of mentality, you feed them that sort of belief system, that keeps them stuck. And education is supposed to at least be a propeller. It's at least supposed to set you up for success, not to set you up for ultimate doom and failure, right? To set you up as having some sort of personal agency as opposed to taking that agency from you and having you believe that you don't have any. And so when we look at the education system overall, the Department of Education, because I'm going to break this down and, we're gonna unpack this thing, but we have to give the context first and foremost of where the state of education really is. Now, the department itself is essentially like any other government department. It is a wing of the government that is funded by taxpayer dollars. Thus is the government, either directly or I guess covertly, as you may say. It is the taxpayer. It is us who are paying for the system. We're paying for the government to exist. I think they forget that most cases. Like, oh yeah, the reason why you have a job is because of this person over here. So take care of my moolah, will ya? So you and I are paying for these individuals. So we paid for the Department of Education to take care of education. But the longer these guys have been around, the worse education's gotten. It's kind of like Gavin Newsom over there in California with, $23 billion allotted towards homelessness, and the problem gets worse. How do we put more money than we've ever put into that system and the problem gets worse? Either it's incompetence or it's corruption, a little bit of both, or a lot of bit of one. And I'm leaning towards one, if you catch what I'm throwing. There is some incompetence, but there's a whole lot of, there's a whole lot of corruption. So you have a Gavin Newsom who is doing that. In the same vein, you have, governing bodies who are over the Department of Education who are receiving multis of billions of dollars in order to operate. So here's your operating budget. Here's a piece of the pie. Now you must, solve the problems within this space. However, the problem's only gotten worse. We are falling behind in education. Our kids are essentially, I hate to say it, but dumber than ever before. Our population overall is dumber than before. I'm not just going to put on the kids. We have ideology that is trumped or overcome, no pun intended. I just, just things just riddled with puns. We have indoctrination that is overturned education. And so that's problematic. Oh, and on top of that, we also have most of the money not actually going to the schools, which that's problematic, right? Fractal of a percentage is actually going to the schools. So I would ask, where's the money going? And this is where my biggest problem when it comes to whether it should stay or go is to say, why does it exist in the first place if it's not solving the problem and it's still taking our money and that money's not actually being used for what it's supposed to be used for? You have one of those aspects as a business that I procure from, or I'm a customer of. if you have one of those red flags, I'm likely going to stop doing business with you. Like if you can't solve the problem, I'm probably not doing business with you. If I'm giving you my money and you are misusing the money, I'm likely not going to do business with you. And you are pocketing money that you're supposed to be using otherwise. Maybe you're charity. You're pocketing the money as opposed to give. I'm not going to do business with you. It's just as simple as that. So if you got all three, you're done for. There's no question about it. And yet we allow for these so-called departments to get away with all of these things. And then we cry, well, not maybe you and I, but certain demographic, a certain group, certain subsect of the population, or I guess psychographic, certain cult, they cry and scream and screech how much of an injustice it is to get rid of that. In the same way they're crying about, how dare Doge, right? How dare your Department of Government Efficiency go and find where money is being leaked and mishandled and corruptly used? How dare you do that? I like my corruption hidden, damn it. I don't want to see it right in front of me. How dare you? You are the problem. You're a racist, fascist, misogynistic pig, and you don't deserve to live like that. That's the sort of rhetoric that is being pointed towards possibly getting rid of a department of education that has been doing nothing but destroying the minds that they're supposed to be molding. Simple.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.